In today's video, I am going to be showing you how to make sourdough starter from scratch 2 different ways. I am Rebekah with Learning Together by Grace, Homemaking God's Way. Y'all, let's get going. All right, you guys, so these are the ingredients that you'll need and the utensils that you'll need. I have whole wheat flour, I have a bowl, a spatula, I have 1 tablespoon, I have 2 half-pint size mason jars, my scale, water, and I have a red and a blue rubber band to differentiate the different starters. These are the flours that I use. The one on the right from Costco, the Kirkland brand, is what I use to actually bake my bread with. The one on the right, the King Authors Golden Wheat Whole White Flour, this is what I use to create my starter and to maintain it. All right, so getting started with the first one, we are going to be using a scale. Not everyone has a scale, so I got you guys. That's going to be the second option, but we're starting off with the scale. Whenever you're using a scale to measure starter or to bake your bread, you are going to use it in grams. So I am going to do a small starter so that it doesn't feel overwhelming and so that you're not wasting a lot of flour. I'm doing 15 grams of flour with 15 grams of water. And once I get all of that measured out, then I'm just going to stir that together until it makes a nice thick paste. I think the consistency of a biscuit whenever I'm thinking about my beginning sourdough starter. As you guys go along, you're going to see how your starter is going to change over time. That's normal. So now I'm just going to place my sourdough starter in this clean half-pint mason jar, and then I'm literally just placing the lid on top. I don't want you to screw it. You saw how I said no, don't screw it. Just place the lid on top, put the ring on, and let that be. And now I'm just going to add my red rubber band to be able to measure how my sourdough starter rises, as well as differentiate it from the starter that I am doing now with my measuring spoon. So for this next starter, you are going to be using a tablespoon. You're going to do 1 tablespoon of flour, the whole wheat flour, and you're going to do a scant tablespoon of water. Now, you want to think about the type of water that you have. If you're using tap water, is it fluorinated? Because fluoride or chlorine, those sorts of things can actually kill the good yeast and bacteria that you need to create a healthy starter. Some people can do it, but it's recommended to do something like filtered water, spring water. You can do purified water as well, because I've used that also. And you're just going to do that and mix it all together, and then you're going to add it to your mason jar. Now, you can use any kind of a container to do your starter. It's just that these mason jars are clear, and it's easy to see what your starter is doing. Now, again, I just put the lid on and put the ring on. I did not screw it because we don't want it to be tight. All right, so that is it for day 1. Now on to labeling them so that I can know the difference between the one for the scale measurement as well as the one for our tablespoon measurement. Again, I'm just trying to keep this as streamlined as I possibly can and teach you guys the best way that I know how to. I'm no expert, but I've learned a lot in the 1.5 years that I have been doing sourdough baking, and I did make my own starter from scratch. All right, you guys, this is day 2, and this is what it looks like. I know it looks crazy because everything looks brown and it can be kind of scary, but this is normal. All of this is normal. And so you are going to just leave your sourdough starters alone for day 1. You do absolutely nothing to them. All right. Now we're going on to, I'm sorry, for day 2, you do nothing with it. Now we're going on to day 3. You may begin to see some activity like I did here. So this is the sourdough starter that I started with my scale. You see the bubbles in there. It's still kind of brown. And even with the sourdough starter that I am doing with the tablespoon measurement, there's bubbles as well. And so there's activity that's going on in there. At this point in your starter's life, it is trying to fight against the good bacteria and the bad bacteria. And it's trying to establish a good, healthy microbiome to make sure that the good bacteria outweighs the bad bacteria. Now, when you're creating a starter, you have what is called lactobacillus. Hopefully I am saying that right. Or lactic acid, that's the good bacteria, and you have wild yeast. So the lactobacillus, that is what will give you the notorious sour flavor in your starter. And then the wild yeast is what produces the carbon dioxide to help with making your doughs rise. All right, just a little science behind that. Now, moving on to what I'm doing here. This is the scale starter. I'm doing the same process. I'm taking 15 grams of the sourdough starter, and then I'm taking 15 grams of water. And I just bought a jug of purified water, or no, it was a jug of spring water I bought from the grocery store just for this particular video for you guys. Just to show it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much at all. And then I am going to mix all of that together. I was using my silicone spatula, but that was not working. So I switched over to a stainless steel fork. And I'm stressing stainless steel because you don't want to use aluminum because there can be a reaction with making sourdough with using aluminum. It needs to be stainless steel if you're going to use steel, or either you can do like a wooden spoon or spatula, or either a silicone spoon or spatula to mix everything together. And so as you can see here, it's still a nice thick consistency, almost like a biscuit batter in dough. That's just kind of how I see it as, and I'm putting my red rubber band on it so that I know what I'm working with. Okay, so now we are going to take 1 tablespoon of sourdough starter out of my mason jar, and we're adding it to the bowl. And then we are going to take another scant tablespoon of water. And when I say scant, I'm going to be honest with you. Everyone's scant tablespoon of water is going to be a little different. It just depends on what you see as a scant. It's not going to be exactly a tablespoon. It'll be a little bit under. This is where it can get a little bit tricky when you're using measurements like tablespoons, cups, and things of that nature. But you guys, it'll be fine. Now I took a level tablespoon of whole wheat flour, and I'm just mixing it in with the starter and the water. Now it is very important to get oxygen into your starter as well, because this helps with the whole process of creating, that healthy environment for your starter to thrive. So this is the end of day 3. Now we're moving into day 4. And as you guys can see, I have pretty good activity going on here. One thing that I was thinking about as I was doing this is that I already have an active starter in my house. And so there's probably already good bacteria that is already present in my home that is allowing my starter to actually get itself going pretty quickly. And another thing that I did as well, I put these 2 starters right next to my fruit. And there's things going on there as well. So these are things to think about. And my house, it stays pretty warm. I keep it around 74 degrees all year long. And so the temperature does have something to do with just having just the right environment for bacteria and wild yeast to grow. So I'm speeding through the rest of this, and I will slow down so that you guys can see each new day and how my starter is looking. And as I am speeding through these days, I'm going to share with you a few things. So something to look at is how the color of your starter. You will see maybe some browning because the starter is getting hungry. For me, I only do, when I was creating the starter for you guys and when I created my own starter, I fed my starter once every 24 hours. So some people do 2-a-day feedings, but I'm gonna be honest with you. It was better for me to do the once-a-day feeding because that's just what worked with my schedule. Maybe it takes a little bit longer to produce a starter that way. I'm not 100% sure, but everyone is going to have their own method, and that's okay. And that's something that I've learned throughout the process of creating sourdough starters. And so moving on, you may see a little brown. There may be a little brown liquid that's forming, and that's okay. That's called hooch. That's basically just fermented alcohol, or because from the fermentation process, alcohol produces when you are fermenting things. And it could be anywhere from like a light gray to a deep brown color. That just means that your starter is hungry. And that means that you just need to pour out that liquid. You take some of your starter out, put it into a bowl with some water and some flour to feed it, and you start the process over again. Maybe you can't go 24 hours. Maybe you do need to do twice-a-day feedings. And again, that's okay. I'm just here to try to get you guys started with the journey and to not give up on the process and to not feel overwhelmed with doing this. Just know that everyone's starter is going to behave differently because our homes are all different. We all have different bacteria and wild yeast floating around in our homes. Now, another thing I want to make mention of is I want you to be mindful of what your sourdough starter is looking like. So for instance, if you are seeing like a pink or an orange color in your starter, that means that there is bad bacteria in your sourdough starter. And at that point, you need to throw it away because that can make you and your family very ill. You don't want that. It happens. How likely is it to happen? Not highly likely, but it can happen. So just be mindful of that. And I want to make mention that sometimes whole wheat flour can have like a kind of like an orange hue to it. There's a difference between that orange hue versus the actual bad bacteria that is being produced. And so I would just suggest looking up different pictures and maybe even researching some videos of people that are showing this bad bacteria. That's pretty much what I did to try to determine to make sure that everything was okay with my sourdough starter. So everything that I have been showing you thus far with my 2 sourdough starters, you are seeing the beautiful bubbles. You are seeing just the different consistencies with my sourdough starters. All of these are beautiful signs of your starter thriving and it being healthy. Another thing that you guys probably saw in one of the previous clips is how I was pointing to the side of the jars, the glass jars, and you could see kind of like a cloudiness from one point of the jar down to the top level of the starter. This is another beautiful sign that you have a working starter. You're going to see here as I point out on this particular jar, that part right there. So essentially that's showing you that your starter rose and then it's starting to drop. And so that means that it went through the process of eating all of that food, which is the flour, and it created a peak or a dome, or what I like to call is a nice little fluffy curved top at the top of your sourdough starter. And that is called the peak of your starter. And so once it reaches the peak and it's out of food, it'll start making its descent down until it gets back to the level that it was before it started really feeding through that food. And so again, this is normal, and all of those beautiful bubbles are normal. That's all carbon dioxide. And again, that is what makes your bread dough rise. Now, throughout these days, the consistency of my starters did change a little bit. And I think some of the variables were, especially with me doing my measurements, you had those scant tablespoons of water, which means that there are some variables there, and it can create a different type of texture in the sourdough starter. It's all okay. It all works out fine. Now, as you can see here in day 9, I really had some good activity going on in this starter where it did a big peak and then it drop down. That means that it's getting hungrier, and that is what you are wanting to see. Now, with the measured sourdough starter, it did take it a little bit longer to get to that place, but you guys, it got to that place as well. So I don't want to discourage anyone that does not have a scale in creating sourdough. You can still create sourdough even if you do not have a scale. All right, you guys, so of course, after day 9, we're going into day 10, and I just want to make mention that it does take a good 10 days to establish a good sourdough starter. This is when your microbiomes in your starter are healthy and they are able to fight off any bad bacteria or yeast or anything like that that would try to take over your starter. Also, I want to make mention that at day 10, you no longer have to do what is called discard your sourdough starter. So with all of those days leading up to here, I took what I needed from the starter and I fed it, and then I had to throw away the remainder of that starter. I know for some people, you may feel a little alarmed by having to waste that food, and I can understand. But one thing that I had to really measure out within my head is, okay, I'm spending about $5.50 on my King Arthur flour. I spent about $1.20 on some natural spring water. So that was what, $6.70 that I spend. We can even round it to $7 that I spend on just that. My whole wheat flour, it will literally last me about 3 to 4 months before I need to buy another one. And so for safety reasons, you have to discard in the beginning. For safety reasons, because again, you have bacteria in there that is not safe for you to consume. So we want to be safe for our families. So this is one of those times where you have to push your frugalness to the side, because I'm a very frugal person, and actually think about safety. And it's okay. It'll be fine. And so at this point on day 11 is when I actually started saving my discard. You're going to see a sourdough discard jar that I have, and you can make some lovely sourdough discard recipes. And my favorite is making sourdough discard crackers. You guys, I'll take the sourdough starter, and then I'll put a little bit of oil in there. I don't measure, but I'll put a little of oil in there, and then I will add in some salt and pepper, maybe some Italian seasonings, and then sometimes I'll do like some ground cumin, chili powder, smoked paprika. I'll add some cheese, cayenne pepper, things like that. Just whatever my heart's content. And I will put that in the oven. Like first I'll lay it out on some parchment paper, really thin. I'll put it in the oven for like about 20 minutes on 375 degrees, or until it just turns brown and crisp up. And I'll break it up and we'll eat that as crackers. And y'all, it is so delicious. There's other discard recipes out there. I just don't particularly save a lot of discard personally, because I'm making bread all the time. But that is the way that you don't have to waste any more discard at this point in your sourdough starter making. Now, another point I want to make is that although you are getting those beautiful bubbles and you're getting your rise, I would still say that after 10 days, your starter is not going to be strong enough to really give you a beautiful loaf and that beautiful rise. It takes time. And I would say give yourself at least 30 days. That's what I did with my first starter, 30 days. And I'm happy that I did wait those 30 days. Here's day 26 for these particular starters. And I was like, okay, it's good enough to bake. And I was going to bake. And I actually fed the starters. I fed a larger amount because at this point, for measuring with the scale, I need 100 grams of starter for my recipe. So at this point, I did 50 grams of my sourdough starter, 50 grams of my flour, and 50 grams of my water. And then for the tablespoon measurement, I did 3 tablespoons of my starter, and then 3 scant tablespoons of water and 3 tablespoons of the wheat flour. And I put it in a jar and I mixed all of that together. Now here you see a difference in days. Day 26 to day 44, my life happened. So what I ended up doing was having to put those starters in the refrigerator because I could not tend to them. And this shows you how forgiving sourdough starter really is, you guys. So I took it out and I fed it on day 44. And I transferred it to a larger container. I fed it again on day 45, and then it had to go back into my refrigerator again, y'all, because life happened again. But you'll see on day 49, I took it out and I fed it, and this is when I actually baked bread. So, you guys, with all of that being said, we don't have to overcomplicate sourdough. I want to suggest to you, be patient. Take your time. You've got this. Leave room for mistakes. It's going to happen, and that's okay. That's a part of the learning process. When I was a teacher, one of the things that I saw is that my students learned different, in different ways, and that was okay. And now that I'm a homeschooling mom, both of my children learn differently, and I have to be mindful of how I am teaching them, and I have to show grace, love, and compassion and patience so that they can thrive. And I want you to give yourself this same grace that you would give your very own children or your loved ones. Give yourself the grace to learn. Now, to end this video, I want to say the way that you can store your starter, there's 2 ways. Either you can refrigerate it or you can leave it on your counter. Now, if you leave it on your counter, you are going to have to feed it every single day because your starter takes the risk of molding if you don't feed it every single day. You have to feed it every single day. And with my method, I just put mine in the refrigerator. So after I use it, whatever is left over, which I guess would be your discard, whatever is left over, I put that directly into the refrigerator. Screw my top on really tight. So by day 11, you're screwing your top on really tight. You have to, so that you can keep your microbiome good for your starter. But I put it in the refrigerator, and then when I'm ready to bake with it, which is usually every 3 to 7 days, then I'll take it out, I'll feed it the night before, and then the next morning I'll put my dough together. But you guys, that is all for this video. I hope you learned something. And for those that want more, you guys, there are so many people out there that are more knowledgeable than I am. But I just wanted to get you started with sourdough baking. You guys, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe and share, and hit that notification bell so that you know when I post another video. Come back next week so that you can see my sourdough bread baking. Leave me a comment as well. Take care. Bye-bye.